Is using reference cheating? Now, first, to answer this question, I have to first explain that art is political. Now, what the heck? I don't care about politics. I just want to make furry art. I just want to draw my fursona fluffy nibbles. So, I'll explain why I'm saying it's political and what that actually means, and I'll explain it in how it relates to art specifically. But pretty much all of the arguments that are so common everywhere in the art space of what's cheating, what's the right way to do stuff, it all falls onto the spectrum of either being conservative and progressive. Now, I'll give examples of the extremes of this so it makes sense for you and just relate it back to art. So for the conservative, the most extreme example of this for me is that you would be not a real artist unless you draw with rocks and the blood of your enemies. If you use reference, you're cheating. You shouldn't even be able to look at anything while you draw. Real artists close their eyes while they do it. And the other end of this, the progressive extreme, would be AI. You know, it's just AI's the future, bro. It's just a tool, bro. What are you, a Luddite or something? All of the discourse in terms of people's opinions on what's right and what's wrong for art, it all falls onto this spectrum. And now I want to explain to you that neither side is good or bad. There are pros and cons to each of them, and you also do not have to pick a side. You can take from both. And I also want to talk about how the spectrum is relative. You might have grown up thinking a certain way of making art was more progressive. For example, digital art, when I was growing up, was seen as a progressive way to make art. You know, back then people were like, no, it's not real, traditional, you must make it with your bare hands, and undo button is the devil. But now with AI, using digital mediums is almost considered a conservative view for those AI bros. You know, it's like just the future, bro. What do you don't want to have technology progress? You have to understand that people tend to think what they grew up doing is the right way to do something. So something that I want you to look out for is the straw man. He'll get you the same way he got me. So what straw manning is when in an argument, when you're trying to prove your point, you'll make up a weak straw man argument for the other side, and you'll easily defend against it because it's a really weak argument. It might not even be a real argument that anyone's ever said. So in art, something that I heard a lot while getting into art was that you should never let anyone tell you that using reference is cheating. And they'll talk about how they had people that would say that using reference is cheating. You should never use that. You should only draw from your imagination. Otherwise, you're not a real human. And that, like, when you hear that, that's like, oh, that's a stupid thing to say. And it makes you take the side of whatever this person is about to say now. They will then give their reasons of like, you should always use reference and never feel bad about it. And that seems like a more appealing idea because they've said a really weak example. Now, it might be true. They might have genuinely heard that. But I don't know about you. I have never in my entire life heard someone to me say that. No one has ever said anything even close to that. The issue is if you hear a lot of these straw man arguments and you never actually hear the real argument from that side, you can develop this kind of like prejudice towards anything that even remotely sounds like the argument you heard. Someone might say like, hey, like using reference isn't cheating, but maybe don't always use it. And you'll say, that looks like blue. Get him. That's the evil. He's the evil. He's saying the bad thing. And it's like, they're not. They're saying something similar with probably more thought behind it and genuine reasons for it. But since it sounds like the straw man, it sounds like that bad thing you heard, you automatically discredit that and you're against, that's evil. Shut up. Get out of here, dude. So I want you to be open to hearing both sides and nothing's going to happen if you listen to an opinion you don't agree with. The same way you can listen to someone give their reasons for why they think AI art is fine. They might say like, oh, well, I don't have hands, and I really suck at drawing. I'm not trying to hurt anyone, but I just like making AI art. And it's like, well, that sounds like okay, I guess. You don't have to agree with it, but you can hear the other person out without having to kill them. Now, I take it that some people, if they have this way of thinking, will even hear me say that. Even like the fact that I would consider empathizing with someone that agrees with AI, you're evil too. Get him in the fire as well. I just want you to be open to hearing both sides of it, because there's genuine reasons why a lot of people have the beliefs they do. Someone that is more into traditional art might value what that has taught them. The difficulty of it, the limitations of that medium might make them grow more as an artist than giving someone all of the tools. Like if you give them AI, you're giving them more capacity to, less restrictions. They have more options. They can generate a bunch of stuff. It takes a fraction of the time. Shouldn't that just make it better? Well, no, because you're stripping away what is important to developing those skills. Limitation is what makes you creative. So if you are given too many tools that make things easier, it can very quickly harm your progression, your actual skill. Like, this is why if you never even expose yourself to the other side, the more conservative beliefs, you'll get dependent on these tools. Now, digital art has a lot of things that can help your art, but they don't necessarily help you to grow as an artist. Like, you can get too reliant on using a billion layers for things or blending modes that you don't understand what they're actually doing. So if you take them away, you don't know how to replicate that same thing without the tool. If you can artificially make things harder for yourself every now and then, it allows you to actually learn what you're doing. So then you can use the tools that help it, but it's not because you don't know how to do it, it's because it speeds it up. It's a time saver. You're not using it as a crutch to avoid learning a hard lesson. Now, it's not to say that digital is easier or harder or whatever. There are different difficulties and different issues that you have to learn to overcome with those tools. The importance is to be open to both of them. The same way, if a traditional artist did both traditional and digital, they'd probably be even better of an artist, because they're both using the tools that are harder, but also allowing themselves to use tools that can speed up progress or speed up their process. So I just want you to be open to hearing, at least hearing, the other opinions from people. There's no good or bad way to do it. There's benefits to both, and you should pick and choose what works best for your goals and what you value out of art. Don't just discredit something because it sounds like that evil thing you heard. Be open to it. Just because you hear it does not mean you have to agree with it. You're only going to benefit from hearing more perspectives, especially from people that are competent in those areas. The best example of this is if you look at paintings from the Renaissance age. Back then, they didn't have the tools that they have now, but you wouldn't look at those artists and think that they're far worse at art than the people of today's age. Like, the average artist is nowhere even close to how good they were back then. It's not to say that you should keep it that way, but there is an importance to actually listening to when someone says that, like, yeah, having all of the tools does not make you learn the quickest. Sometimes having limitations and less tools can make you grow at a quicker pace, You can grow more. And when you are willing to make things harder for yourself, not always, but often, then when you're finally giving yourself those tools, you will know how to use them properly. If you give a really good artist AI tools, they're going to be making way better art than any random person that just uses only AI generation. Like, all of this aside, AI art looks like garbage anyways, so I don't think a good artist is going to be wanting to use that in their process. But you get the point, right? It's just someone that uses only the tools that take away all of the learning isn't going to learn much, Anyways, if this helps or makes any sense for you, I'm glad. If you'd like to consider supporting me, you can check me out on Patreon. I think I have an Etsy store if you want to buy a mouse pad. Yeah, go do that.